Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this segment of Healthcare Consumerism Radio. This is Brent Macy, Managing Director of the Institute for Healthcare Consumerism, along with Jonathan Field. We've got on this segment who it's been a past guest with us before. We've got Eric Rentsch, and he is the COO of Code SixFour. Eric, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much, guys.
How you been doing?
Been doing very well, thanks. Had a very busy summer. Things are going well, so I'm excited to be back here.
Well, I bet it's about to get even busier for you, huh, with open enrollment emerging, right?
Yeah, I think so. This is going to be a busy fourth quarter. A lot of moving parts this year, so it's going to be busy.
And I think, I was Eric's been on the program with us before, and I was listening to a segment yesterday from the past segment. And Eric, I know you had mentioned that you were going to kind of elaborate a little bit on that past segment. And some of the things that you had mentioned last time you were on the program is really the attention to detail in the health and benefit space from the brokers, consultants out there, and then winning in this current environment. And fast forward to now with benefit advisors in the 2014 open enrollment period, kind of where do you see the employer's top concerns right now as we're going into 2014?
Well, it's a really good question. It's a big question. I think we kind of have to break it down into, oversimplifying things a little bit, but into two employer segments. We think about things that our small employers are going to be experiencing, and we think about things that brokers are going to be helping large employers deal with. And it's going to be a very different experience for both, obviously, the employer mandate driving those key differences. So for small groups, their top concerns going into this year's open enrollment, last year, Obama provided a reprieve, grandfathering of small group policies that were not ACA compliant. So you have a lot of small employers that this year, some carriers are actually enabling them to extend that. But they're going to want to evaluate the market. They're going to want to know, what are our options. You also have some that are considering dropping their plans altogether. They don't have a penalty when they're under 50 employees under the law. So for them, the question is it worth the same benefit that it was before now that the individual marketplace's guarantee issue? Mm-hmm. They're very complicated issues. There's a lot of considerations that have to go into that. Would my employees benefit from pre-tax group benefits more than individual marketplace subsidies? So I think a lot of employers in the small group market have a concern now, meaning in August, September, October, before open enrollment, which is let's do some analysis to really determine what our strategy is.
Okay. Now your model there at Code SixFour is really to help these advisors as much as you can around these different elements. Is that correct? Around how they can help?
That's exactly right. So, we like to say we're the strategic back office to the independent benefits agency. We help with we put technology behind the analytics and the data. We make sure that, everything's compliance reviewed and audited so that things aren't being reinvented. The wheel's not being reinvented every single time you engage a client. So we make things efficient for the agency with world-class materials.
Now, when you look, kind of at the brokers that you work with, the consultants out there, the advisors, what actions are the benefit brokers taking right now to prepare for open enrollment?
So for those small groups, they're preparing, I think, for quoting demands. They're doing their best to get ahead of those pricing discussions. Just take one client, for example, right? Let's say it's a school system with 30 employees, and they may want to evaluate 20, 30 small group products, and they may also want to talk about individual marketplace products. So suddenly for one client, you might be quoting double what you used to be before. Mm-hmm. For large groups, it's a much different discussion. The challenges employers have going into this year's open enrollment as a large group is for those over 100 life employers that need to be fully compliant with the employer mandate on 1/1, they've got to assess stability periods. They've got to look at whether they need to determine who's full-time, who's part-time. A lot of employers have done that analysis to some extent at this point, although there are many that still need to do that. And they've evaluated the cost. They've said, wow, this is going to be an expensive change for us. It's expensive for companies to continue to offer benefits.
Wow.
So they're obviously exploring cost-effective solutions, like defined contribution on a private exchange. Others that haven't really made that leap yet are looking at, cost-sharing changes to their plan. So in that regard, one of their big concerns for open enrollment this year is how do we communicate this to our employees? How do we help them understand what we're changing here and why our employees are still protected and we still value them? So the role of the benefits advisor through that, the actions they're taking now, is many of them are getting ahead of open enrollment. They're scheduling meetings, not with employees, but with the decision makers, so that they can budget enough time during that open enrollment to really be there for the employee and to be able to support them and explain, why a company may be going from a $500 deductible to a $2,000 deductible, and why that's okay, and, what additional coverages they have available to them. And that's happening more and more and more. One of the products I'm sure you guys have seen is these minimum essential coverage plans or skinny medical products. Mm-hmm. Those are things that are complicated for employees to understand. So brokers are preparing now for that by making sure they have the time to be there during those significant changes.
Now, if and this is just a question, is it enough for that employer and their team of brokers or their broker just individually, is it enough for them to say, hey, we had to make these changes because of the healthcare law? Or do you have to have more substance than that when addressing the employee populations of these changes?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, that's obviously a nice fallback, meaning from the position of the employer, how the employee receives that is, going to be better understood than, hey, we're simply cutting this because our budgets are down. But, at the end of the day, that employee still has higher cost exposure than they had before. So the best communication programs will actually combine why we made this change with why we still think you're protected and secure. And that often comes with maybe introduction of supplemental insurance products or a more robust communication plan to drive adoption of HSAs and encourage employees to put more savings into that so that they can roll that over year and protect themselves from out-of-pocket costs and exposure. So I think it's enough to start with that, but you really need to finish with actually helping the employee know what to do from there and helping them really be responsible consumers of healthcare.
Yeah, and I think, I agree with you completely. I think if you see the trend out there, and wonder if you agree, the trend is that employers are looking at the full replacement, high deductible type plans and then wrapping the supplemental health products in there to fill gaps in care and is that going to be the end game for the employer and say, hey, I'm just going to go to this full replacement program, with these consumers and type elements wrapped around it, so I'm creating better consumer health? Or is it going to be, as you heard in the prior segment with Jim at Bloom Health, are you going to move to a private exchange? That's, that could be the next step for some employers out there with a defined contribution model. Are you kind of predicting that happens, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you. I would actually, I'd say it like this. Let's say we start from a very common standpoint where a lot of employers have maybe one or two plan options, a PPO and maybe a high deductible plan. The PPO is the buy-up. A good first step would be a full replacement product, moving to a higher deductible, and that's the only offering you have. I think from there, you're going to find some companies are very enthusiastic about their benefits programs. There are a certain percentage of companies that believe in the power of benefits as a competitive advantage, and their industry is very competitive for talent. Professional services organizations, law firms, technical recruiting firms, these skilled labor employers, that they're never going to drop their benefits plan. And so what they'll look at is a more active product, something they can more actively manage, like a benefits captive or a self-funded plan that they can pair with very engaging health management programs. Now, I think a lot of exchanges are looking down the road and seeing that, and they see that as an opportunity for their technology to play a role. It's not that they're mutually exclusive. It's simply that today, because of where the private exchange space is, that would be a solution for an employer that's looking for choice, but is also looking for administrative ease. And it's a mechanism for them to, simplify their model, whereas a self-funded plan with health management really does complicate the model, though it comes with a different set of returns and benefits.
Now, when you look at your business there internally, at Code SixFour, what are some of the most important strategies that you're recommending to insurance brokers as they, adapt and try to grow their agencies internally?
So, I appreciate that question. What we really try and encourage our member agencies to look at is two things. I guess I'll pick. There's a lot, but two things that are really important. One of them is from a cost structure standpoint. When you're operating an agency, to maintain profitability, benefits agencies need to be looking at every possible lever they can pull to increase the efficiency of their business. Technology tools, partnerships with experts in the industry, whether those are law firms or accounting firms or others, to bring more efficiency to the way they operate, and try not to be the person doing everything on your own. So that's really about a cost control discussion. The second is really from a revenue standpoint. Looking at other product lines like voluntary benefits is important, but I think the more important trend is actually to look at fee-based consulting as a source of revenues. And this is something that, because of the complexity in the market, is a big opportunity for agencies to really, expand their expertise and go to clients and position that value and operate on a fee-based model. That's something that's definitely gaining traction, and we encourage a lot of our members to go down that route, and we help them do that.
Eric, we got about a minute left on the program. Kind of give us one, good takeaway, and then let the audience know how they can find you if they're interested in doing some business.
Great. I would say one key takeaway is that, this year's open enrollment is really going to be where the proof is in the pudding with a lot of things. A lot of employers have this year to kind of make their decisions in a big way in response to the ACA, and it'll be the first chance where we have a large set of case studies, so to speak, around what's working. So prepare now as a benefits agency. Support those employers, do the due diligence today, and really get on the game, because this is going to be the most important time that I think we've seen since, the Affordable Care Act was rolled out. As far as getting in touch with us, you could go to our website, www.code64.com. That's all spelled out, and always reach out to me as well.
Hey, Eric, really appreciate you having you back on the program today, and have a great weekend up there. And to the rest of our audience, stay tuned for the next segment of Healthcare Consumerism Radio.